and welcome to another exciting edition of Mamdi's Lounge.
Mamdi's Lounge Season 2 is here, and it keeps getting bigger and better. Our conversations are spicy with guests that give in-depth insights to every topic. It's Mamdi's Lounge, your one-stop shop for great conversations.
We know that when there are crises, women are usually the first responders. They come to the community, they help out.
The bride price is not looked at as placing a value on the woman. It's looked as a commitment.
So I think it is something we should look at. It is endemic in our society. And for us to address it, it's going to take a national call.
Every Thursday, 8 p.m. on AYV TV, Channel 33.
All right, hello and welcome to Mamdi's Lounge. Today, Mamdi's Lounge is coming to you from the beautiful hills of Regent, a home to 89 chimpanzees at the Takugama Sanctuary. This environment is very serene. Lots of trees, it's very quiet and peaceful. So I can't even imagine a better place to talk about our topic for this conversation, which will be on mental health. So joining us today in the lounge is Dr. Carol Labour and Ines K. Ines K is Director of Nursing, and both of them are visiting Sierra Leone. And we are very happy to have you in the lounge today, ladies.
Thanks for
happy
having
to be
us.
here. Also, Hannah Fuller is with us, and we are coming to you from Takugama Sanctuary.
With MP, your safety comes first. In case of an emergency gas fire from our gas cans, 1. Use your finger to block the knob opening of your gas can. 2. Use a wet cloth and put it over the flame and the knob. Or 3. Wrap the tank with the wet towel and the flames will go out. Take a rubber bucket and cover the tank. At MP, your safety is our paramount concern.
Na the EcoBank microfinance, we don't find easy way for you picking them better one to marabambai. We don't find way for put money inside you small business them, no matter how small the business be. EcoBank microfinance, they're also glad for make your business grow. In not though, we ready for give you all the financial support for make you team up tranga one. So, now for come with we on this new journey, we say all you dream, then will come true. So now for just come, now the EcoBank Microfinance Office, we say you go learn how for open up savings and current accounts for you picking them, get money for you small business them, and send money now 33 countries inside Africa, and also open up savings and current account. Visit we now any of them branches soon. Begin and end your day with Gladdy EcoBank Microfinance with the help you small business them for team up Tranga one.
The Asma James Foundation improves the lives of girls from marginalized backgrounds by giving them access to reproductive health education, scholarships, mentoring, and life skills training. We also use the media to advocate for policies that positively impact women and girls across Sierra Leone. Asma James Foundation, providing adolescent reproductive health education and services to girls in Sierra Leone.
All right, welcome back. This is Mamdi's Lounge coming to you from AYV Television. Today we are actually at the Takugama Sanctuary. Talking about serenity and the peaceful nature of where we are right now. Let me quickly ask you this question, Dr. Labour. Is there a relationship between your environment and your mental health?
Most certainly. Environment has a lot to do with good and bad mental health. Mm-hmm. And so one of the contributing factors to care, especially self-care, is being in an environment such as this. It's tranquil, it's quiet, it's nature. You're next to God, pretty much. Mm-hmm. So that's a form of self-care that I would definitely encourage people to do.
Okay. So part of what we do also on Mamdi's Lounge is to inform, our viewers. You have a lot of students who follow us, on the show. So, for the benefit of those of us watching right now, I would like you guys to, define mental health. What is mental health? I'll start with you, Ines.
Well, mental health is emotional well-being. Mental health can be explained as the way someone feels or how they're emotionally feeling at that particular time. I don't know if Carol would like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, Carol.
Sure, and I guess one of the most simplest way to explain it is when it impacts your ability to live, laugh, and love. It impacts your lifestyle. It impacts your ability to do things that you normally do. It impacts your will to live. Now, there are legal definitions, the DSM-5, that they use to actually diagnose mental health conditions such as depression, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety. There's a lot of different contributing factors that go into the actual mental health diagnosis and the specifics of what an individual is suffering from. But it just impacts your life and the ability to do what you normally do.
Okay. So what would you say are the differences, or the difference between mental health, anxiety, depression, or PTSD? Are they all under the category of mental health?
Those are just different diagnoses that come under mental health. But when you say mental health, period, you're not saying a disease. Mental health is just a state of emotion. So for us to talk about mental health, we can talk about different diagnoses that come under the category of mental health. That's where you have the depression, the anxiety, the PTSD, the schizophrenia, the bipolars, and everything like that.
For us here in Sierra Leone, the minute you mention the word mental health, all we think about is somebody being crazy, and not all of these things that you're talking about. So how do we make the distinction between being crazy, and the other things that you've named that are associated with mental health?
One of the things with even using the term crazy, it's derogatory, and it adds to the stigma of mental health and why a lot of people may not feel comfortable in identifying self or going to a doctor and being diagnosed with a mental health disorder or condition because of the stigma. Stigma is a huge thing here in Sierra Leone and even across the world. It's a global issue. There are a lot of campaigns that have been led to destigmatize mental health because for us being being on the ground, seeing the conditions that people face every day, looking at the different ecological factors, things that contribute to the to decrease health and wellness in individuals, is nothing to make them feel bad or stigmatized. And especially when it comes to women, when it comes to African women and Sierra Leone women, we like to hold ourselves in high esteem. So if we're suffering because of that stigma, because of, you would say, the kongosa that'll follow if someone identifies and say, oh, I'm suffering from depression, we tend not to vocalize it and we internalize it a lot, which increases the pain that we go through.
But you agree that generally Black people, Africans, Sierra Leoneans, we consider ourselves to be much more tougher people in terms of what our threshold is when it comes to pain and just being able to deal with tough situations of difficult times. So we kind of, I don't know, maybe you'll say we're in denial that we do go through mental health problems or challenges.
Well, I don't believe that we're any stronger or tougher than any other group of people. But what I think is because of where we grew up, we were taught to be strong. We were taught not to talk about certain things. We were taught to hold it in and deal with it. So because we're not talking about it, because we're just sucking it in and just dealing with it, we think we're tough, but really we're not. And that's what the problem is. Because women are not talking about it and they're not dealing with the issues, it has to get to that point where they break before it is heard about. And that's when we have a problem.
So are we saying these issues, all of these list of issues that falls under the category of mental health, depression, this anxiety and all of the rest of them. Is it prevalent amongst women? Is it more prevalent amongst women?
Depression is prevalent amongst women globally. It's a global issue. Okay. But just to piggyback just one bit from what Inez said is, with me growing up in the States, my even though I was born in Sierra Leone, I was encouraged to feel. And I identify with suffering from depression, and people are like, not tell people that don't talk. But, just growing up in the States is something that I've been empowered to do, because it's not looked down as much as it is within the Sierra Leonean and African community as a whole. But then at the same point, there's also the strong black women, being a strong black woman theme across the world, that we're strong, we're tough, we can handle anything that life takes us. And so what I like to do is to decrease that stigma, decrease that myth, and encourage people to talk about it. Talk about how you're feeling, find people that you trust, and talk about it. Don't hold it in because it eats at you. And coming back to your question, with depression being one of the leading illnesses that women suffer globally, why? I don't know the answer to that, but that's based on WHO research. I like when I'm talking about things to just base it on research and evidence-based, so that we're providing good information to people, especially when it comes to care, and so that it's care. It's research-based. We're not saying, now for do this, if me now you I go do this. No, if it's self-care, let's go through the different techniques. If you go into therapy, a therapist will use things like DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, to help you through depression and different disorders.
And to piggyback on that also, depression is actually a mood disorder, and it affects over 350 million people in the world, with most of them being women. Research-based. It is one of the most popular diagnoses, under mental health. It's not the plain old feeling the blues kind of deal. It's actually a chemical imbalance that affects mood. And it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something that can be, with counseling and everything like that, it's something that can be managed.
So I like the bit that you mentioned about counseling. Ours is a society where people talk. You would go through, you stressed or you depressed or whatever, you decide for talking to somebody. That somebody they get to know somebody. That somebody. So that's how people, it goes round, and by the time you know it, everybody knows, say, Mamdi depressed, or Inez depressed, or Carol or Hannah depressed. So I understand when you talk about counseling, but counseling out here is not something that's not big here. So people sort of go through some of these things in silence. First of all, the stigma. By the time you don't talk to one person, the next thing it's all over the place. So people tend to sort of hold back, suck it in, go through it, and all the consequences that comes with it. So let's say you were talking to people who, so before I come to that, let me quickly ask this question. How do you know that you are suffering from depression, for example, or anxiety, or PTSD?
I would say that you won't know. You have to visit a doctor, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist that's trained to identify the symptoms that you present. So you visit a practitioner and you ask them how you're feeling, how long you've been feeling. Because as Inez said, depression and the likes is not something that's just, one day I'm down and then the next day I'm okay. There has to be a time that you have felt this way. And and different presenting symptoms, and that will lead to your actual diagnosis. Now, when you talk about PTSD, a lot of times when people go through trauma, and it can be natural disasters, as we've had here in Sierra Leone with Ebola, the war that lasted for over a decade that impacted so many lives. You have people today that are still impacted by that war. You have the mudslide that occurred, people that witnessed that. And one of the distinctions between anxiety and PTSD, anxiety is kind of when you're anxious, you're anticipating that something bad is going to happen. PTSD is when you know when something bad has already happened and you're still afraid of it. So you're triggered. So say with the mudslide victims, we rode by there this morning and it triggered me because I was here. We landed here the day the mudslide happened. We were on the ground. We went to the site. We saw, we saw deceased people. We saw the injured people. We saw women and children through Inez's network, the We Care network. We were able to just visit with people. So even for me, just seeing that site this morning, it triggered that. Yeah, it triggered that memory. So just imagine how an individual that actually experienced that, what they go through when it rains, if they hear familiar sounds, children, women, men that lost their loved one and within that. So that's what brings on a lot of PTSD that we don't address, because you have the whole naphobia. Anything that happens, they're going to say, naphobia, or even if not something where and tell person, if you know self-care techniques, you'll be able to help yourself, instead of just saying you just sit down silently, and talk to person, you get to the point. One of the things that we don't talk about as a society is suicide. There's a high rates of suicide within our own Sierra Leonean community. And it comes with the stigma. You don't want to bring shame to your family, your community, your husband, your loved ones. So you'd rather just suffer silently. And a lot of people, they commit suicide. And within our community, dande sleep off, dande idisi, dande. But they will never explain what happened to that individual. So a lot of people suffer silently from different disorders.
All right. So you know why I asked about the signs? Because like you mentioned, you have to go see a doctor or probably somebody, a healthcare professional or what have you. So if, for example, let's say you have malaria, with malaria, you get one body, you get fever, you eat the heart. So so the way they feel so, like go hospital, go see a doctor. So with depression, for example, or anxiety, what exactly, you just walk into a doctor's office and say, I think I'm depressed, or I think I'm anxious. Is that what happens?
There are some typical signs of depression, or typical symptoms of depression. One of them is persistent sadness. Yes. So it's not, I'm sad today because something, or I just heard the news and whatever, and then I'm done. It's persistent sadness. And then you have feeling of isolation, where you don't want to be bothered with anything. Something like, I used to love bird watching. And all of a sudden I decide that, you know what, right now, I don't want to be bothered with bird watching. I just want to be left alone. And it's not just once. Decrease in appetite, weight loss. There are different things that can point that are signs of depression. But not unless you go to a doctor or clinician who can diagnose you using one of the tools, like there is a geriatric depression scale. There is I believe it's called Hopkins depression scale also. There is 7 major tools that can be used to diagnose depression. So not unless you go to one of these clinicians who have been taught, how to, use the scales to test for depression, then you can have a right diagnosis of clinical or major depression. Other than that, really, you can't we all sit at home and say, I feel depressed. But not unless you see a clinician, then you can get a diagnosis.
Difference between clinical and major depression, but let's go for this quick break. We need to make some money. This is Mamdi's Lounge, is coming to you from AYV, and today we are at the Takugama Sanctuary, bringing this all-important conversation to you. Today we're talking about mental health. We're looking at depression, anxiety, TPSD, and all of that. Of course, we have Ines K. She is Director of Nursing, and also she's got an establishment called We Care, providing care for less fortunate people here in Sierra Leone, and of course, Dr. Carol Labour. Alright, she's here in the lounge with us today, and also Hannah Fuller is with us, and we are coming to you from Takugama Sanctuary.
With MP, your safety comes first. In case of an emergency gas fire from our gas cans, 1. Use your finger to block the knob opening of your gas can. 2. Use a wet cloth and put it over the flame and the knob. Or 3. Wrap the tank with the wet towel and the flames will go out. Take a rubber bucket and cover the tank. At MP, your safety is our paramount concern.
Na the EcoBank microfinance, we don't find easy way for you picking them better one to Marabambai. We don't find way for put money inside you small business them, no matter how small the business be. EcoBank microfinance, they're also glad for make your business grow. In not happening, we ready for give you all the financial support for make you team up Tranga one. So now for come with we on this new journey, we say all you dream then will come true. So now for just come, now the EcoBank microfinance office, we say you go learn how for open up savings and current accounts for you picking them, get money for you small business them, and send money now 33 countries inside Africa, and also open up savings and current accounts. Visit we now any of them branches soon. Begin and end your day with Glady EcoBank microfinance with the help you small business them for team up Tranga one.
Quality electrical products now in Sierra Leone. Looking for cables? Ask for Havels. Havels cables don't catch fire. Looking for lights? Ask for Havels. Havels lights come with 1-year warranty. Havels products available in all stores nationwide. Or ask at Insons, 52 Shaka Stevens Street, Freetown. Or online at www.insons.net.
The Asma James Foundation improves the lives of girls from marginalized backgrounds by giving them access to reproductive health education, scholarships, mentoring, and life skills training. We also use the media to advocate for policies that positively impact women and girls across Sierra Leone. Asma James Foundation, providing adolescent reproductive health education and services to girls in Sierra Leone.
All right, welcome back. This is Mamdi's Lounge, coming to you from AYV Television. Today we are actually at the Takugama Sanctuary. There can not be a better place to discuss this all-important topic we're talking about, mental health. We've spoken about depression, anxiety, the difference between depression, anxiety, and
post-traumatic stress
I'm not a
disorder.
doctor, so I keep forgetting.
It's okay. PTSD.
PTSD.
Yes.
Yeah, it's better for me. PTSD. So I have Dr. Carol Labour and also Ines K, and of course Hannah Fuller, all ladies in the lounge today. Actually, I heard from Dr. Carol Labour that depression affects more women, so it's very good that we're all here as women, not because we're depressed, because we want to shine a light on this all-important issue of mental health. So we continue with the conversation. Ladies, Ines, I was going to ask you the difference between the different stages of depression.
Well, not particularly the stages, but when we talk about depression, it's a clinical diagnosis. And clinical depression is the same as what is called major depression. And that's usually where there is a chemical imbalance. And at that stage, of course, you need to be diagnosed to say that this person is clinically depressed. And like I said earlier, it's not just the feeling the blues kind of deal. So that's where we have to make a distinction, because sometimes we just have the feeling the blues, or we're just in a, what we say, in my feelings. and we say, oh, we're depressed. No, that's not depression.
So when you talk about chemical imbalance, to my mind, it means that you could do something to work on the chemical imbalance in your body.
Definitely.
Is that a possibility?
Yes, definitely. When someone is depressed and clinically or suffering from major depression, and they see a clinician who has diagnosed them, definitely it's something that can be taken care of. You know, there's a lot of functionally depressed people. You don't have to take medication, you know, to control that. Sometimes people just need to be counseled, or what we say, talk to someone, you know, and see a psychologist who is someone that you just talk to. And if a psychologist evaluates you and they feel like this person is so chronically or they're suffering from major depression to a point where they really need medication to manage them, then that psychologist would refer you to a psychiatrist who now can prescribe you medication. Okay. So there's a difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist.
Okay. It's the level of training that the practitioners have. So a psychologist can provide different therapeutic tools, but a psychiatrist actually prescribes the medicine. One of the things when you talk about recognizing the signs and symptoms is really about education and training. And one of the things that I do is I conduct training. Last week. Exactly. I conducted training with the 4th year medical students at Comas to teach them how to recognize the signs and symptoms of different types of mental health disorders. Now, some people say mental health conditions, mental health issues, mental health illness. It just depends on the population, and you don't want to add to the stigma. And following up with what Inez said, not only is there clinical depression, major depression, people have depression with psychotic features where they're hearing things, seeing things. So that's why it's important for individuals to be trained and educated on how to recognize the different signs and symptoms in order to help. One thing, which is a shameless plug, I do have a course that I teach, which is mental health in vulnerable communities, preferably in African communities, so that we as a whole can recognize this, to decrease the stigma and the conditions that contribute to the health, the mental health of us.
Inez and Carol, for me, I think, you know, now after hearing everything that you guys have said, I go back to the days of the war, you know, after the war, or even, a lot of Sierra Leoneans hear a big sound. You kind of like get startled. And not realizing that it has to do with what you guys are saying today. And then I realized that also after the war, we had organizations like Handicap International and MSF that were offering psychosocial counseling for victims or people who were affected by the war, as well as, I think, perpetrators, child soldiers, or combatants. But those programs were very short-lived. And now, so many years after the war, a lot of us are saying, is it that we're suffering, what we're seeing now, the violence, a lot of anger, is it as a result of what we went through as a nation? Is there a connection there?
There is definitely a connection with that. When someone has something like PTSD, it's not something that you can put a Band-Aid situation to. Those people were here for a short period to help us, to see us through that period. But after that, what happens? We were supposed to help them through that. There are people that you can give short-term therapy to and it can be effective. There are people that would need a lifetime therapy to deal with this thing or deal with these issues.
Yes, depends on the range of the condition, the mental health condition, and also mental health disorders. It's subjective. It won't affect you the same way that it affects me. Some people went through the trauma of the war, of the Ebola crisis with all the massive deaths and also the mudslide, and they build resiliency. And resilience is where you have the experience, but you're able to move on You're able to process it. You're able to move on. You're able to function, able to cope. You develop coping skills. And that's a lot of times what happens in therapy as well. The therapist goes through different coping skills for you to manage your depression, manage your anxiety, manage the PTSD, especially when an individual is triggered with something such as a loud sound, or even if you see people that are just angry. They may not be angry. It can be depressed. It can be a form of anxiety because it manifests itself in different ways. So that's why it's very important for us to push.
So in fact, I'm going to still hold you there. I mean, in terms of the way all of this manifests. So you mentioned something about anger. What else? What other ways do you think can
to manifest anger,
violence,
you withdraw, isolation. You have people that are lethargic, they can't do anything. You have individuals, she mentioned, people that can go, then they crash, and then you have stages, you have mania, where people can build this hut in two minutes, to say, but then the next day, once they crash, they can't do anything. That's why it's very important for us to have that education and training. And I will offer it to you and your staff if you would like to take my course on mental health in vulnerable communities.
Absolutely.
But do you? Sorry, I want to go back to you people are in the diaspora.
Yes.
Going back to Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora, comparing them with Sierra Leoneans in Sierra Leone, and our attitudes towards mental health. The two sets of Sierra Leoneans, are they which of us would be more willing to go for a diagnosis and for treatment and that sort of thing?
I would venture to say Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora, the younger generation, that with this women's empowerment, global movement, and even when you talk about gender-based violence, those are all things that contribute to an individual, especially a female, developing a mental health condition. And I think the more that we empower ourselves and empower others, we're not afraid to voice out that, hey, I'm suffering. Hey, I need help. I always say, oh, I suffer from depression. And people are like, why? You always look so happy. You get this, you get down there, you don't do this, you don't do that there. But it doesn't come by that. Depression doesn't have a look. It doesn't have a shape. It doesn't have a color. It doesn't have an age. It doesn't have a gender. It affects different people. Children are depressed.
Wow.
You have a lot of children that have childhood trauma, childhood depression. You have children that go through stages, children that have traumatic brain injuries. There's so many contributing factors to those developing mental health conditions. We also look at family history. If your family has a history of things such as schizophrenia, anxiety, depression, there's a chance that you have that in you. So it's very important to recognize the signs and the symptoms, so you can say, this me granny be they do this. I they feel me granny be they talk saying that this be they happen to him. So now me self they feel the same way. But when when you're educated to say, it's a side that's a sign of depression. Oh, that's a side of PTSD. Let me go get help.
Guys, I must say I am really learning.
Okay.
Honestly, this session is really, really good. I mean, there's a lot I have learned. Talking about, before we continue, let us just go for a quick break.
With MP, your safety comes first. In case of an emergency gas fire from our gas cans, 1. Use your finger to block the knob opening of your gas can. 2. Use a wet cloth and put it over the flame and the knob. Or 3. Wrap the tank with the wet towel and the flames will go out. Take a rubber bucket and cover the tank. At MP, your safety is our paramount concern.
Na the EcoBank Microfinance, we don't find easy way for you picking them better one to Marabambai. We don't find way for put money inside you small business them, no matter how small the business be. EcoBank Microfinance, they're also glad for make your business grow. In not Tapado, we ready for give you all the financial support for make you team up Tranga one. So now for come with we on this new journey, we say all you dream then will come true. So now for just come, now the EcoBank Microfinance office, we say you go learn how for open up savings and current accounts for you picking them, get money for you small business them, and send money now 33 countries inside Africa, and also open up savings and current account. Visit we now any of them branches soon. Begin and end your day with Glady EcoBank Microfinance with the help you small business them for team up Tranga one.
Quality electrical products now in Sierra Leone. Looking for cables? Ask for Havels. Havels cables don't catch fire. Looking for lights? Ask for Havels. Havels lights come with 1-year warranty. Havels products available in all stores nationwide. Or ask at Insons, 52 Shaka Stevens Street, Freetown. Or online at www.insons.net.
The Asma James Foundation improves the lives of girls from marginalized backgrounds by giving them access to reproductive health education, scholarships, mentoring, and life skills training. We also use the media to advocate for policies that positively impact women and girls across Sierra Leone. Asma James Foundation, providing adolescent reproductive health education and services to girls in Sierra Leone.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Mamdi's Lounge, and today we are coming to you from the Takugama Chimpanzee Sanctuary. I'm here with my ladies, hanging out with my ladies, Dr. Carol Labor, and also Ines K and Hannah Fuller. We're here at the mountain top, having a good time, in this conversation. Today we're talking about mental health, and a lot has been said. And I'm sure if you've been following up on this program, you must have learned a thing or two about this all-important topic, because I definitely have learned something new in addition to what I already knew. Back to this issue of the effect of the war. I traveled to London, and then I was working with my friend to the bus station. And then all of a sudden I saw people running. Mm-hmm. This was my first time after the war. And I just saw people running. I didn't know they were running to catch the bus. And I just took off.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's a trigger.
I just started running. And my friend was like, where are you going? I said, I don't know, but people are running. Now it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Back then, it didn't occur to me that maybe I was for some sort of
PTSD.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then now it's clear now to me. And I'm sure we all, must have related with the story one way or the other, because we all have our own experiences after the war. Now, I know we've been talking about depression, the side effects and all of it. Hannah asked the question about, the difference between how Sierra Leoneans back home and Sierra Leoneans abroad handle this whole issue. For me, I just think maybe when she asked the question, I was like, it's obvious, but Carol spoke about the willingness on the part of the younger folks, in dealing with this issue. But back here, I still want to continue with my point about people, the stigma.
Yes, that's it.
Stigmatization. I don't know, what is it, guys, in your view, that we are missing out as far as dealing with these issues are concerned?
Before Inez or Carol comes in, I think even we don't take mental health seriously. You go back to even the war, post-traumatic stress, as you're saying, disorders and things like that. Our military men who served in the army, you watch the news, you listen to the news about American soldiers and the Gulf War needing help because they suffer from depression and that sort of thing. But I mean, now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking where our military that kind of opportunity to go through treatment, or were they offered? We don't even know, you know. So it's like we don't really take it seriously enough, you know.
There was mentioned earlier about the transition from the war, and even when the mudslide occurred, a lot of the agencies, UN came in, WHO came in, and what I feel is that happened. There's a gap in services because we're addressing the issue that just occurred. We're trying to stabilize the issue. We're trying to get individuals into housing, get them clothing, get them fed. And yes, they did address some of the psychosocial aspect, but then there needs to be a movement of individuals that are trained, one, in recognizing it, and also to train clinicians, psychologists, psychiatrists within the country so that we can address that. Ministry of Health is doing a good job in trying to improve the healthcare system, and one of that has to be the psychiatric aspect as well, and not just the Kissy Mental Hospital.
Not just Dr. Naheem. We need many more.
There's such a huge range with mental health disorders. There's a huge spectrum. So there's a stage here, and then there's the Kissy Mental Hospital, and between that, there are thousands of people that need assistance in dealing with the different emotional, because when you talk about mental health, we're talking about the emotional aspect, the psychological aspect, and then also it manifests itself in some physical symptoms as well. You may have people that suffer from migraine headaches, or they go complain all of a sudden my body they act, and they've already been to a doctor, so they no say no to malaria. They no say no to any illness where the doctor they sleep on them. So then the next step is that sometimes this is coming from my emotional well-being. I'm not as happy as I should be, as I used to be. Let me take a further step. So again, it's educating and education and training on recognizing the signs and symptoms, so that individuals, you can go for help, or if you recognize a friend or family member, you can encourage them to go for help. And then also that decrease the stigma in it, so that we address it, so that we're not the mentality of our parents, our grandparents, phobia. You know, it's not the mentality of our men, our African men, to be strong. It's okay for a man to cry. It's okay for a man to cry. And as a woman, you should be able to tell your partner, I'm depressed. You should be able to tell your partner, I don't feel myself. I want to go and see a psychiatrist, and he should go with you. He shouldn't say, na Christuma, I don't mind. You know, he should be able to support you in that aspect.
And you know what, piggybacking on that, the stigma is the biggest.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. And talking about diasporans and Sierra Leoneans here, you know, living here in the country. Now, just like Carol said, I went through a phase where I was depressed for a little bit. All I had to do was talk to someone. Thank God, because I have a very strong faith. That helped me. I didn't have to go see a clinician, but talking with my pastor was one of the biggest things that brought me comfort. And at that particular time in my life, I went through a divorce. I went through some, things in my family. I had went through a couple of deaths, before that. So it had built up. And now I was at this point where I was at the border of depression. Not major depression, but I had some symptoms that I had to deal with. And when we think about talking about it in the diaspora, I can't just go to anyone and talk about it. As you guys have seen, there's the WhatsApp videos, there are the recordings and everything like that. When you talk to someone, they tell somebody else. They gossip, Kongosa, pick up phone, three-way calling and everything. It deters people from wanting to talk to people.
Right.
So what we encourage is, you don't have to talk to someone in the community. You can talk to a clinician who has the right to keep your information private.
HIPAA laws.
because of the regulations and the laws, they can't just go talk about it to someone. So there is a way to stay private, because at one time or another we can all be through it. I have been through it. I have a family member who's been through it, a young family member who's been through it. And you know, not until we're educated that it's okay, do not feel stigmatized. We need to stop this thing about it don't crease, it don't lose in mind, it don't wait in. Now man left and I don't also, you know, it they say mama died from that said it crease, or he lost his job after that, look at fever.
Right.
We need to stop these things. We need to know that these are normal things that can happen to people, and we have to start accepting of it. And these are conditions that can be treated. It's not just depression. You have schizophrenia. You have bipolar that people are born with, that people inherited.
Wow.
And these are conditions that people live with. People function with it in our communities.
So
you have an entire, just like the depression, it's not just one depression. It's different. It's the spectrum, and schizophrenia as well has a spectrum. You have different type of. It's a personality disorder that people struggle with and suffer from. And again, it's really just destigmatizing it. And one of the things for me, especially with women, when something happens to us, and a thing within the Sierra Leone community is relationships. Relationships are held to such a high esteem, and you have individuals that are depressed because they're dealing with different situations in their relationships. They're pretending to people like on, you know, that everything's okay, but they're suffering silently inside. You know, you have the situation with gender-based violence. When the First Lady talks about hand off our girls, after the hands off our girls, how do we heal our girls? How do we heal the millions of girls globally that have suffered from gender-based violence? It's not just jailing or issuing punishment on the perpetrators, but what about the victims? How do the victims heal? Because if you're a victim of gender-based violence, it's going to follow you down through different generations. So you have generational trauma, intergenerational trauma, historical trauma, things that have happened that we mentioned in Sierra Leone. You have the whole with the black community, the whole slavery. Those are all historical traumas that lead and contribute to depression and other mental health disorders within our communities.
Like Mamdi was saying, for me, this is an episode that I have learned quite a lot from, because to be honest, I'm not sure I've really taken time out to focus on this particular issue. And I'm just wondering, how do we in Sierra Leone make it better for ourselves? How do we give support? It's a subject that a lot of students, I'm sure, are not thinking of studying because maybe it's not attractive. They don't know of any possible jobs that they could do with studies in this particular area. You know, so it's going to be difficult to even get people who would be there to provide the support, you know, that sort of thing. That's why we only have had Dr. Naim, you know, so nobody there between us and Dr. Naim, you know, that's professionally trained and that sort of thing.
I think that's where you have the change agents like Dr. Carol Labor here, who that's one of her passion. For me, I'm here talking about it because it's something I have a personal experience with and multiple experiences with, and something that I became very intrigued about, because not only was I dealing with it, but it was happening so much around me. Like I felt like someone needed to break the ice, which is why I came on Facebook and started talking about it, and Mamdi and I had this, you know, connection about it. But someone like Dr. Labor, who studied this and who knows, and she's been dealing with the Caribbean community, the African community. She's been lobbying and she's been meeting with people in government. She's been going to the UN. She really has the experience of how this can be handled. And I feel that's where we need to engage people like this in our community so that way they can educate us, because nothing can happen without education. Our people suffer or perish because of lack of knowledge. And when you give them that knowledge, you empower them. And that's what we need to do, is empower our people. We need to teach them that this is not something they need to be ashamed of. If I can come here and talk about it today, and I can encourage that family member that I had dealing with it to talk about it, every single one of us can encourage someone else, educate someone else, and let them know, when you tell me something or when I know you're suffering, let me be able to come to you and say, it's okay. I'm here for you. And let me not be the one who's going to go around and pass around the news and stigmatize you and make you feel ashamed.
And talking about Dr. Carol and her expertise. Dr. Carol, we know you live abroad in America. How can we benefit from your expertise? Because clearly there is an absolute need for somebody like this out here. I don't know of many through that phase who you have not actually, I've not needed help, towards that end, but I don't know about many psychologists or counselors around here. So maybe again, there's an absolute need for people to sort of delve into that aspect, because honestly, this country has so many people already go through different categories of, all of NCR we talk about. We really need help. But sometimes again, as much as we talk about stigma, also the side where people go seek the help. They don't even know. So if I go to this place, I can actually get the help that I need. So we don't even know where these outfits or these outlets are out here. So maybe again,
if we have any.
If we even need help, where do I go for the help? So maybe that's another thing that we were struggling with as a people. So Dr. Carol, we don't know how we can tap into your expertise as a people. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know, but how can you be of help to Mama Salone?
Well, for me, I'm definitely willing to engage in the various stakeholders on this topic, because it's very important. Even last night, I witnessed, it was 3 little girls. They had to have been under the age of 12, 13, and they were asleep on the sidewalk with their mango baskets next to them, right on Wilkinson Road. So what we need to address the whole mental health as a whole, and also the childhood trauma, the things that the children are going through, that when they become adults, they will be able to handle their emotional. And it's not just us. We have to heal our generation, the generation before us, which is our parents, and the generation after us, which is our children. And we only can heal through educating individuals, establishing resources for them. So the people that are experiencing signs and symptoms and don't know where to go, you can say, hey, this is a resource list. Even like when you look at the UN mission here, they have a list of medical doctors, and I actually went through it, and there was a limited amount. I believe it was 2 or 3 individuals that practice therapy, psychology within Sierra Leone. And another thing is cost. One of the things when you talk about development and developing human capital, you have to provide funding for therapy, education, psychosocial support, because it needs to be evidence-based. It can't be you today, at the open center because I want to talk to this person, but you don't have the expertise, because all you're doing is you're pretty much perpetuating the situation. I would even take it to the level that you're exploiting the situation if you're not trained in this. Like for me, I'm a doctor of public health, so I can't do counseling. I can't do clinical counseling. I can do self-care sessions for individuals and groups. And that's really to just educate individuals on recognizing the signs and symptoms. And then if you say, hey, this is applicable to me, now I need to see a psychologist. I need to see a psychiatrist. So that's one of the things that we have to, as a society, we have to stop putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches.
Exactly.
We can't do, you do this, you do Dande, you do this, and there's no way we're going to heal. There has to be some uniformity. There has to be guidelines. It has to be policy driven. It needs to be evidence based in order for us to heal.
Wow. I totally agree. Ladies, I mean, you know, it looks like this topic here, we're not going to exhaust it inside one day. It's so broad.
We'll be happy to come back.
I'm really happy that we're having this conversation. Like I mentioned earlier, I really don't learn a lot, you know, personally, and of course I should see from really what we out there yourself a thing or two on this all important issue. We talk about mental health and of all these things that we attach to depression and all the rest of it. So we wrap up now. You know, we're wrapping up the show, and so I'd like to go around the table again. So coming back to the issue of stigma, I'll start with you, Ines. How do we, you know, destigmatize, if I can put it that way, this whole issue of mental health? Because the stigma is in the center.
Yes.
You know, so how do we destigmatize this whole conversation around mental health?
One of the major ways, and I believe with everything, is education. The more we sensitize and educate our people on this topic, the more they'll know, and the more they'll know how to handle it. And the more we talk to people, not to be ashamed, the more people that come out and discuss their experiences, I think the less stigma that there will be attached to it. I am so happy to see now in a country like this, women coming forward to say, I have been raped, I have gone through this, I have gone through that, where before we can't even talk about issues like that. So that's one way, because people are coming out and talking about it. People are getting used to it, and now pointing fingers is going to be difficult because we're now talking about it and accepting of it. So I believe with more education and sensitization and teaching people how to cope and deal with these issues, I think we would help to reduce the stigma.
Yeah, I totally agree. How about also, so before I ask you, Carol, how about also, I mean, like we all agree and we all know that people talk around here a lot. So how about, because I don't care when I say my stuff to you, if you want, you will talk up. That is your problem. But also about individuals, we make like a personal note. Like say if Ines are talking a business to you, Ines can say to Carol, so you know, say Mamdi na. Then Carol himself say, no, Ines, you don't need for Carol to talk to me about Mamdi. Mamdi will send you. You understand? How about we make those conscious efforts as individuals? Like if somebody feels like talking to you about something that he or she's going through, and because he trusts you in the first place. So the point about you going around sharing it to other people, maybe so you really can share it, you also make a personal decision. Say, listen, it didn't send you for can talk to me. So that way they also go help the person. We don't be reporter, we don't get station. It will be difficult.
I think that's the buck stops here kind of attitude is something that can definitely help to reinforce that.
Okay. So Carol, I'd like to hear from you on how we can help to destigmatize this whole issue of mental health that we're talking about.
Just to piggyback, I mean, again, it's really education and training, and for us as women to share our stories. There's power in storytelling. Storytelling is evidence-based. There's training that can be done on teaching individuals how to properly tell their stories. For me, I share my story all over. I don't care. Me, I know be seen. You know, if people want to talk, they're going to talk. So I share my story because how I ended up in doing my research on gender-based violence and on mental health in heterogeneous communities is I actually suffered from depression. And it was my therapist. Well, she told me not to call her my therapist. She said she's my life coach. So it was my therapist that said, why don't you take a class? And I took one class to learn about depression and how it impacts women, which led me into enrolling into my doctoral program, which led into my research. And I've done research on the effects of mental health disorders within African communities as a whole, and also with women as a whole. Different from diverse, multicultural, multilingual communities, because each community handles the topic of mental health in different ways. And within Sierra Leone, depending on your culture, your tribe, your beliefs, it's also handled in a different way. So we can't come in with an umbrella approach, a one-size-fits-all approach in handling this.
Okay.
You have communities in, I believe it's South Africa, or one of the African countries that even utilize an evidence-based approach as a community bench with grandmothers, where grandmothers sit on a bench and they talk to you. And again, the whole thing with sharing your story and being afraid, I encourage people to be bold, share your story, because I'm the type of person you would never hear Carl said, because I don't engage in Kongosai. What I do with people that bring Kongosai to me, I cut you off and the other person off. I don't deal with it at all. And I think that's the approach, because we can't be afraid to tell our stories. Women are suffering in silence. Women are committing suicide. Women globally, they're the highest rate of individuals that attempt suicide, and they're the highest rate that actually complete suicide. But in order to decrease the stigma, to decrease the suicide rates, one of the components with depression, people may have suicide ideation, so thoughts of killing themselves, and people just become despair and despondent. So until we break the cycle of shaming people, break the generational curse that if you identify that you have a mental health disorder, you don't shame the family. Oh man, don't shame, you don't disgrace we, you don't disgrace you man, you don't disgrace the picking them. Until we stop that, we have a long way to go.
Thank you very much. Hannah, quickly.
Well, thank you very much for a lot of things that I've learned today, and I believe those watching have also learned quite a lot. For me, I would just also want to focus on the support system of the family. We're supposed to be supportive anyway, as Africans, you know, but I think somewhere along the line we've got some disconnect that has taken place. So we need to go back to the family, give support to those who need it in terms of mental health issues. And I would also like to appeal, because from what all that has been said here, I just realized so much that really a nation that is healthy, whether it's mentally or physically, is a prosperous nation. You know, there's no dispute about that, you know. So if we see that and value that, and I think from government and every other sector in society, we should really take this particular issue seriously, very seriously.
Indeed. All right, thank you very much, ladies. Well, I think you guys have really said, and part of it's what I wanted to sum up with. So we don't hear the definition of mental health, and of course a lot of people they actually don't benefit a lot from this conversation. Not to where somebody they go through a situation where you decide to talk to you about, you feel like you say now you're not the chairman for the association of employees, we do whatever they happen to have. The support system we need for really needed for the support one another. Of course, Carol, don't talk a lot. There's an absolute need for shine more lights. Their governments and all the other partners that we did in this particular issue take them more seriously, so that a lot can be achieved. The Hannah say a nation we healthy, a nation a good nation, we prosperous, a nation really do well, you know. So on behalf of all of us, I have been your host, Mamdi Kamara, wishing you a wonderful evening. Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Mamdi's Lounge.
Mamdi's Lounge Season 2 is here, and it keeps getting bigger and better. Our conversations are spicy with guests that give in-depth insights to every topic. It's Mamdi's Lounge, your one-stop shop for great conversations.
We know that when there are crises, women are usually the first responders. They come to the community, they help out.
The bride price is not looked at as placing a value on the woman. It's looked as a commitment.
So I think it is something we should look at. It is endemic in our society. And for us to address it, it's going to take a national call.
Every Thursday, 8 p.m. on AYV TV, Channel 33.